behind the curtain of virtual meetings. So I ask that you listen intently, listen to learn. We can take questions once all of our presentations are complete. We do have a really great lineup today. We have Dustin Fitzpatrick, who is our air quality planning coordinator. He's going to talk about greenhouse gas inventory. Hansu No is our modeling manager at PAG. He's going to share trends about VMT and travel patterns. I think all of you will find that quite interesting. And I will share highlights from the annual report that we just submitted to ADEQ. We do track our data for the annual report for our survey on a calendar, January through December basis. So just keep that in mind and I'll remind you when I'm talking about it. And then we will have a grand finale with Natalie Shep, who's the Senior Program Manager for PDEQ for Outreach and Education. So just so everybody knows, we are recording and we'll be capturing the time that people are spending today to contribute to our in-kind total for TRP. Just a little tidbit, in 2020, our program brought in nearly 120,000 in-kind. So we are the gold mine of in-kind currently at PAG. We do collect in-kind through our survey process. So with that, we will kick this off and let everybody know that we are rolling. It's 10:06 and we'll turn it over to Dustin Fitzpatrick. Dustin, you can take it away.
Great, thanks, Mary. Again, I'm Dustin Fitzpatrick, PAG's Air Quality Planning Coordinator. Welcome TRP Task Force members. And today I'll be presenting a summary of PAG's updated regional greenhouse gas emission inventory, which touches on the greenhouse gas emissions produced from commuting. Okay, so the current inventory covers the years 2014 to 2019, whereas our previous biennial inventory covered 2012 to 2017. So this inventory added data for calendar years 2018 and 2019 from the various entities that consume or provide energy resources. So that includes Pima County and Save Tucson government departments, the various gas and electric utilities in the region, the airports, railroads, landfills, Cal Portland Cement for the industrial side, Marana Water Reclamation, and Caltrans. So this report was approved by PAG's Environmental Planning Advisory Committee this past June. There were a few changes to the previous inventory. Most units are reported in US tons from the various entities and then converted to metric tons for the inventory. There were some past years where they hadn't been converted, so everything's been converted over from US tons to metric. Some values were previously reported just as CO2. They're updated to CO2e, which is the equivalent, so including methane and nitrous oxide. Public lighting label was changed to specify street and traffic lights, to differentiate from park lighting not being included. So then that facilities definition has expanded to facilities and parks. We updated the past year's data provided by regional contacts to correct some values that had been updated or were previously incorrect. And then we removed the million BTU energy values from all of our charts and tables just to be consistent with other greenhouse gas inventories that are conducted nationally. So here's a map of the inventory area, which is eastern Pima County, where all the populations lie, and where the greenhouse gases are concentrated and produced. So this border was expanded from the previous inventory to reflect emissions and data provided by utility companies and the Tohono O'odham Nation. So expanded a bit to the south and to the west. So the orange boundary area there is for the city of Tucson community emissions, whereas the blue is the main inventory, the Eastern Pima County inventory area. And then there's also subsets included in the inventory, which are the Pima County and City of Tucson government operations. So the methods that we took in gathering this inventory, for one, PAG has a membership with ICLEI, which was previously International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives. Now they're just called ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability. So that gives us access to ClearPath, which is an online greenhouse gas emissions calculation software program, which is really convenient and provides all the emission factors for the various energy areas. We use the EPA's MOVES, Motor Vehicle Emissions Simulator, for calculating emissions from mobile sources. For this inventory, we had used the version 2014B as we're transitioning to the latest model, which is called MOVES 3. And then for gathering information on emissions from recycling and whatnot, we use EPA's waste reduction model, the WARM model. Okay, so the emission sources included in the inventory, you've got your stationary energy use broken down in the residential, commercial, industrial sectors, transportation, just on-road, non-road, which is your heavy equipment and whatnot, locomotives and aircraft. For waste, there's the solid waste disposal side, and then the wastewater reclamation, and then the recycle materials we account for. They reduce from the total. Then industrial processes, that's basically cement production from the Cal Portland plant. And other is the Central Arizona Project water delivery. And that's traditionally been included in PAG's regional inventory. It's a scope 3, what's called an upstream emission. Sometimes it's not included in other accounting approaches, but we viewed it similarly to other utilities, such as accounting for the emissions when you purchase electricity. So when the city and county use water from the CAP canal, there's a lot of energy that's goes into that, of course, to get it the 300 something miles from Lake Havasu and 2,000 or 3,000 feet pumping it uphill. And excluded were hydrofluorocarbons, perfluorocarbon, sulfur hexafluoride. These are usually refrigerants. They have really high global warming potentials there. So that global warming potential is basically just the measure of radiative forcing of the greenhouse gas mixed in the atmosphere over a chosen time period, which for our inventory is a 100-year time frame compared to carbon dioxide. So you can see methane's 25 times more potent, nitrous oxide is 298. And then you get into these other ones are vastly higher, but they're hard to account for and get an inventory proper, accurate accounting for. So summary for Eastern Pima County here, 2019 greenhouse gas emissions, you can see we're close to 13 million metric tons. You compare that to the US at 6.5 billion. It would come up to about 0.2% of the US total. They've got the per capita emissions, 12.5 metric tons per person, whereas US is closer to 20. And then Here's the populations, Eastern Pima County at 1 million, the US at almost 330. So we're about 0.3% of the US. We come out lower at 0.2 than the 0.3 is it's not accounting for the national emissions, such as, for manufacturing and military operations and whatnot. So you can see though we've been dropping over the last 6 years from 15 down to 13. Here's an overview of the Eastern Pima County community. Again, this is the entire blue box on that map. So stationary energy, we've got 54% of energy of greenhouse gas emissions, for the region. Transportation coming in at 35%. You can see how much energy the CAP delivery takes, 3%. Although 7% in industrial processes, that's just for cement production from Cal Portland, and then waste is down there at 1%. So Eastern Pima County community on the stationary energy, you see almost half is residential energy use, commercials at 24, industrials at 31. That's just the nature of more industrial operations lying out in the unincorporated area than the commercial. You'll see that flips when we get to the city. So here's the transportation mapped out. 71% there coming from private and commercial vehicle travel. So that's the majority of it. Aircraft accounting for 15, locomotives 2%. The non-road, again, that's things like construction equipment, that trucks that don't drive on the road, 12%. And transit contributing less than 1%. With the waste for county community, mostly emissions coming from solid waste versus only 3% from wastewater reclamation. Moving on to the city of Tucson community, stationary energy making up 64%, transportation 32%, CAP 3% again, and waste under 1%. So pretty similar to the county community. Go into the stationary energy, pretty identical with residential, 45. Then you get the flip there, more commercial energy use in the city community than industrial. But again, industrial and commercial making up over half of the stationary energy use. On transportation, pretty similar again, private and commercial, 85% of the total, non-road 14, transit at 1. And a similar picture with the solid waste versus wastewater reclamation. Moving on to the county government subset, you got stationary energy at 73%. And then you've got the employee commuting there at 14%. So pretty significant portion of greenhouse gas emissions for employee commuting there for the county. Waste at 6%. And fleet at 7%. For their stationary energy, facilities and parks making up 2/3. Then the other mostly going to wastewater reclamation, pretty energy intensive, and then street and traffic lighting just at 2%. For the fleet, it's mostly on-road, only 3% being non-road for county government. And wastewater processing making up majority over solid waste, since the county is treating a lot of the waste in the community. City of Tucson government, here you see stationary energy is way higher. They're at 96%. That's because of the energy used for CAP to get that water here. And proportionately, that knocks employee commuting down to 1%. Even though, similar to the county, they've got several thousand employees commuting. Waste under 1% and fleet at 2%. So here's that CAP allotment being 3/4 of the stationary energy use. Then they're into potable and reclaimed water. Facilities and parks only making 7%, and district and street and traffic lighting only at 1%. They have slightly more non-road emissions than the county government operations at 6%, but mostly coming from on-road vehicles. And that covers the our most recent inventory. We have to take questions, I guess, now or at the end, Mary, whatever works.
Well, we're good on time. If anybody has any questions, you can unmute and pose those to Dustin.
I have a question and a comment. I will say I really appreciate that PAG puts together this inventory. I think it's really helpful for us to be able to see what's going on and have it broken out by city and county jurisdictions is also extremely helpful. Since both the city of Tucson and Pima County have signed off on their own climate resolutions, do you know how they are utilizing this information? If any goals for reducing those emissions have been set based on the emissions inventory?
Yeah, Natalie. So, with the city passed the resolution, the climate emergency, and are developing their climate action and adaptation plan. So they're referencing our regional inventory, and they're in the process. I believe by the end of the year, they're supposed to be hiring a consultant to develop that 10-year climate action plan. And one of the considerations for them was to start with this broad overview, and then they'll need to decide if they're going to get finer resolution by going down to, say, the city department level and keying in on which departments are contributing which emissions. It's probably better to get finer resolution on which facilities you're getting emissions from. That would probably direct you best to where to do your retrofits for heating and cooling and whatnot. All the lighting's pretty much been tackled with the changeover to LEDs for street lighting and traffic lights. I know that made a huge difference. With the county, I know there's the government operations plan, looking at that. And we gather data from the county, to compile this. But whereas the county doing the government operations, I think the city climate action plan is going to go beyond the government operations and expand into that City of Tucson community evaluation to see where they can reduce emissions community-wide. I don't know if that's through policy, building codes, or how they're going to do that. It will be interesting to see where the process goes. So yeah, they kind of started off with our inventory just as a baseline, and then they'll move forward. And I know one of the issues, of course, when cities do their inventories, and Tucson Water being involved, a lot of these accountings come from businesses, corporations, and so whereas like with your electricity use, you account for those upstream emissions because the power plant's burning coal or natural gas, and those are getting attributed to you. The water often isn't. It would be the say Tucson Water's distribution system internally, and it wouldn't account for how that water arrived here. So normally you could either pump it through groundwater, or whereas in this case you receive it from the CAP canal, those upstream emissions would be assigned to the Central Arizona project and not to the city. So ours has included those as regional emissions. So that's where the water's coming from. It's viewed as kind of a utility, and similarly to natural gas or electricity. So that might be something that's different in their inventory. We'll have to see, but we've included that in our regional look.
Thank you.
Yep. Welcome.
Great. Any other questions? And then otherwise we'll move on to our next speaker. Not
Hey, Dustin, could you
Yep.
go back and pull up the pie chart? I think it was before you separated out Pima County and City of Tucson, the transportation.
Is it Karen, the county community transportation?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, probably. Oops, was that it? Here?
Yeah, maybe so. Thank you. I took a snapshot so I can review it later. Thank you.
Okay, sure thing.
great. Well, thank you, Dustin.
All right.
Detailed report for our greenhouse gas. For those of you who have not had the opportunity to work with Dustin, he's just amazing in terms of his knowledge about all things air quality, really supportive of the TRP. So thank you for your presentation. Now we will move on to Hunsu No, who is our modeling manager, who will take it away and impress you with all of the things he's pulled together that helps us understand some of the trends that we've been seeing in a pandemic. All right, turning it over to you.
Okay, I'm just trying to set up and my camera, and it's kind of just gone and shortly.
Uh-oh.
Let me just check.
Then I'll take a second to thank our task force members, Alex Chavez from UA. I see you've joined us. Thank you. And Josephine from Bureau of Prisons. Happy to see you join us as well. And Monica Landgrave from City of Tucson.
Okay, and good morning all, and the TRP members. And my name is Hensuno, as just introduced by Mary, the model manager at PAC. And well, thank you so much for this opportunity to talk about the travel impact analysis during the pandemic. And here's the contents. And today I'm going to talk about in the introduction, especially for just the COVID-19 timeline and the Google's and the mobility report and the street light data VMT trend as just the main section. Then just in addition, and I will just go through just TRP employee survey analysis, then just will summarize and in the final discussion. The first, and since just the first COVID-19 and was found in the United States, it's been around 2 years. This pandemic has been changing many things in our life, and not only just wearing masks, but also transforming our daily activities significantly. One of the examples you can simply think about it, and today is a TRP task force meeting, and we are more used to have virtual meetings and conferences. And since just the January 2020 and the first United States COVID-19 case was found, then just significant and the concerns were escalated, and especially just in March in the state government and those closes in the public schools, as well as just ordered to stay at home. After then, some kind of just another just the concern and the other side and the economic things in the state selected and the business reopens, and as well as just the ended in the stay-at-home order in May. Then just we had a kind of just a strange in the summer, and those just the first wave of COVID-19 cases during the summer, and they increased. Then and as well as just expecting to just having just a vaccine as realistic as possible. So finally, and those kind of just concerns, and we went through together. And the first and the vaccination started in December 2020, especially for those the frontline healthcare providers. And then finally, just the March and the vaccination and open to all just the 16 plus Arizonans. Then the August 2021, and most of public schools started 100% offline classes. So here's the COVID-19 cases, the right side, and COVID-19 vaccination left side. You see the first in the COVID-19 cases in the first wave and here. and during the summer in 2020. Then after then, the spiked, and during just the mid-November 2020 through just January 21st. After then, just a drop and increased and up and down, and but we are around the time, and still kind of just concerning. But we and most of them got vaccinated. And on the other side, you see that so far just around the 64% in the Pima County population got vaccinated. And they see, and most of just the vaccination and happened increased this sharply during this just springtime. And this is the Google mobility report, and Google has been providing their just the trend, and based on their just the Google and the analysis, and based on their just their and the group or sectors, and the retail, recreation, and the parks, the workplace, and grocery and pharmacy, transit stations, and the residential area. So their data set is actually just the daily activity and just up and down, but I think it might be just better to just aggregate the averaging just the monthly. So you see that kind of as a stepwise just up and down. And they actually track all those kind of just percent change based on the January, February 2020. So you see just the up the first week and in February, and I'm sorry, the half of them and actually started in the middle of just the February, and see in the first in the school and the closed and also stay-at-home order made the March 2020. You see that certain kind of just the increase, and here's just the residential area around like a 15% higher than just compared to the baseline, and on the other hand, the other and the activities just dropped significantly in April, and especially those work place and the percentage and the drop around 45%. Then after just the stay-at-home order ended, you see that some slightly just increased, and as always just passing through just first wave in summertime in 2020, you see that some kind of just gradual decrease. Then the COVID-19 peak period, and during that last winter, you see that, and those residential percent has been increased and a little bit, and then but on the other side, those the grocery farmers percentage dropped significantly, and as well as the other and the sectors. Then so vaccination open to all just a 16 plus, you see that at the increase improved is the better for other and the groups, especially for the grocery and pharmacy. On the other hand, those residential areas are gradually dropped. But this summertime and just maybe just the first summertime, and trying to just get out of this state, and because of a hot summer, might be just to change it a little bit. But you see that just a significant just changes still in fact, and at the end of just October, we still see that 4% the higher, and than just the baseline, just residential, the activities, and the other activities are still kind of just lower than and expected. And see here, just the park is maybe I think just might be related to just the park closes, and especially for those Ramadans, and cannot be used, and combining together with the summertime in the Tucson, the regional. So here's another data set regarding just the VMT, and the street light data, and you see here has been providing there just the peak count level, just the estimation using there just the LBS and the GPS, the data set, and using just this collected from the cell phones. And see first in the January and the February, and normally just we have around like a 20,000 to up to just 25,000 and the VMTs, and based on just the seasonal impact. But as you see, the first order and the made in the public school closed, and including together with the stay-at-home order, and March and April, and dropped significantly, and which was 25,000 and 25 million VMTs, and 40% more than 40% drop in just April, around just the 16 million VMTs. And just in case, and you see they're all just up and down, and this is the daily activities, and the Friday and top, and usually is down, and the Sunday, and the orange color shows that just the 7-day, and the average, just the green light I'm just actually following here is the monthly average. And after then, and you see that stay home order ended. There are some increase, then having those like it's just the first wave of COVID-19 and summertime, just it's a little bit down, and but then just up a little bit. Then those peak period in the COVID-19 during last winter, see that just significant drops, and but not comparable to the first and the drop, but it's actually dropped significantly. And then just as getting the vaccination and more and more, then just see that increase. And after then, like it's just the summertime, and including me, and I tried to just get out of the state, and because of the summertime, first time ever had like a vacation. So I assume, and I kind of just guessed that most of just the seasonal impact applied in this just the VMT. And you see that some of just a hint, and those kind of just increase, and in just the September. So this is the additional stuff, and TRP employee survey, and with that, and we analyzed a little bit and see that in the first 2019, we collected around just 50,000 in samples, and but a little bit just dropped, and because of the COVID-19, you can imagine that, and university closed, and the students are not available, so maybe just this kind of drop expected. On the other hand, and we had more just employers, and surveyed more in 2020, which was in 2019, 190. But in 2020, we had a little more than just 200. So here's the survey, and the employer, just the location heat map, and total just the 8 employers were out of the survey in 2020, and the 20 new employers participated in 2020. So first in the university area, downtown area, kind of just a highlight, you see more just spread out, and including just the TMC and the Raytheon area as well. So one of the most important just the factor we consider in this kind of work from home and behavior. And so you see that work from home, and in 2019, which was just around in the 17 or 18 in 100, but now actually just the bumped up significantly, and around just more than 8,000 in the samples. So in 2019, and see that around the total like a 4%, now just 19%. And among them, so especially for those in the at least 5-day at home ratio, there's a significant increase at 12%. Then we kind of just classified based on just the next code in 2020, and which job sectors actually just showing more just the work from home. And as you see, and the information, and including just the IBM and Intuit, for examples, and significantly increased, and around just the 60% of them actually just taking their work from home. And see around the 50%, half of them takes more than just the 5 days of work from home. Then just followed by utilities, and then the manufacturing. But this classification is based on the employer side, not for employee side. So most of just the utilities and the manufacturing sectors, for example, TDP and Raytheon is mostly just office jobs. You see that, like I said, around 40%, in the middle is just 30%. And those are kind of just the percentage ratio of the work from home. And we also just analyzed, and if there is any kind of just improvement in the speed change, or just travel time save, and based on those two and the 2-year data set, 2019 and 2020. So according to the data set and sample data set, and you see in the 2019-2020 distance, no significant just differences, even though we have some changes, 20 new employers and 8 employers they're actually just out of the survey in 2020. Travel times is the same, and for the home to work, and the speed is around just 30 miles per hour. Just a walk to home is the same as well, and this is very similar. But other than like the travel times, and 2020 walk to home improved a little bit. So this is overall just a summary, and trip activities and the VMP were affected temporarily by COVID-19 pandemic, as well as relevant in the state or local orders and guidelines. And activity locations by Google Mobility Report are still affected by COVID-19, but it varies by activity group. The VMT dropped more than like 40% in March 2020, right after just a stay-at-home order made. And then just we gradually just improved since August 2020, but the VMT is still around 20% less than, and comparing to the last in the January, February 2020. Work from home rates based on the TRP employee survey, and so increase those work from home rates increased 4% to 19% in 2020, and no significant impact on just the commute time, and for those and the TRP employees participating in the survey. Thank you, and this is all I prepared today. And if you have any question, I'm happy to answer that.
Thank you, Hansu. Any questions? Not seeing anybody unmuting. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for coming in and sharing all that information. We have shared portions of what he presented in our annual report. Our ADEQ representatives are not here today due to scheduling conflicts. So with that, I will give you a highlight of our ADEQ annual report, and then I'll turn it over to Natalie. So mine is pretty brief, and I don't have slides like everybody else. We're just going to give you the highlights. As Hansu had shared, he reported 204 employers had responded in 2020. We are currently working with 208 employers with hope to grow the program. We were at 211 employers in 2019, but due to locations dropping off and changes that were a result somewhat of the pandemic, we have lessened it from 211 down to 208. So the Cornerstone Hospital, Jim Click Automotive Mall, both locations, and M3 Engineering, Sonora Behavioral Health, and UPS were some of the employers that did not participate. They got skipped. It was an operational hiccup, but we have them back in for 2021. So when we look at total number of employees that participated, so we're at 132,802 in 2019, but then we had 128,207 in 2020. So as we roll up the end of our calendar year, and we'll be wrapping up our survey results for 2021, it will be interesting. We're tracking those as a trend. Interestingly enough, when we look at the variation, that was only a 3.46 change between 19 and 20. Of the employers that we skipped, they accounted for 40% of that variance. So they're larger employers, of course, which is why they're near almost half of what the change was. The other thing that we do is the activity inventory report. That was administered in mid-April to mid-May in 2021. With the magical talents of our tech services team at PAG, we upgraded and enhanced the air survey process. We now have a validation function. We can go in and make sure that we have proper contacts and everybody in place before we actually distribute the survey. And as a result of that activity, some of the highlights of the air survey results is we did see a change in adjusted work schedules that are up 12.2%. They went from 59.1 to 66.4%. So as we see everybody doing this pandemic shuffle, the change in how we manage a workforce is we all hope and believe that it is here to stay. Also, subsidy payments went up made by employers for alt modes, only slightly. It went from 8.8 to 11.6. The number of employer sites stating that they offer bus passes is down. And also with the fact that we have free transit service, and that's free through December 31st of this year. Please share that with all of your employees if you haven't already. No news on that right now, if that's going to continue. And also, just as Hansu had reported, telework is up and offered by 51.1% of all employers. Now, the change between 2020 and 2021 is only slight. 47.8% were offering it in 2020, and now up to 51.1% of employers. And then the last thing I want to add is from the MAP dashboard at the U of A Eller College. Arizona's rate of telework is noted to be at 25.4, and that's an overall number. But that's a significant increase of 5.4% that we saw in 2019. And that was reflected in Hansu's presentation as well. In 2021, one other thing that we did add with the air survey is we added a question, and it was really a crapshoot to see, okay, what are employers predicting? And the answers that we received of 92 companies who provided the information is that in terms of what do they believe was going to happen with their workforce in terms of working from home, we had 41 of 92 companies believe that 0 to 50% of their workforce would be working from home permanently. And that's sort of a vague number, but in terms of those that responded, only 12 of our respondents actually said that 100% of their workforce would be working from home. Just as a note, and we don't have final numbers, but in working through the survey process through 2021, end of 2020 and 2021, what we are seeing is that move from the giant building into a work from home situation. So we've seen it with AFNI, our call centers, Comcast, Coventry. Coventry went from 100,000 square foot building to 100% work from home, and they now lease a office space at Williams Center of about 3,200 square feet in the event someone does not have internet connection on that day, and then for their training facility. So those are permanent, and whether they are an actual result of the pandemic, in Coventry's situation, they were in the process of making that move prior to the pandemic being full blown. So for TRP, in this year, we're excited that we actually did see some growth as well. With many of you and the different things that you're working on when you're in the middle of the pandemic or in the middle of the grind of the pandemic, when you see growth and innovation and things that are going well and improving, it's very positive. We were able to bring Amazon Fulfillment Center on board in March of 2021. They have over 4,000 employees. Their population does soar in Q3, Q4. They're like everyone else trying to hire as many as they can right now. At the same time, we did have organizations that left the program, and that was for closures, and that was C3 Customer Contact Channel. They had a couple of their locations just closed down and pulled out of Tucson entirely, and they ceased operations in 2021. So going forward, we're looking at the future. We're going to expand TRP. We have worked with our internal communications department. We have collateral put together. We've looked at our TRP database and then compared it to the employment viewer. We have a gentleman at PAG, Eric Kramer, who works on that. And we compared the two lists and we've come up with a target list of those employers that meet the criteria and are eligible to be part of TRP. So we will be going out and making friends and recruiting and getting people on board to participate. PAG is not an enforcement agency. We will never be an enforcement agency. We will work with these different employers to educate them and let them understand how it benefits both them and their recruitment. We're also looking at TRP as it is now a workforce development and recruitment tool, because we have a lot of new grads or of our younger members of the workforce who want to know that they have that option to work from home. It's important for them because they can move on down or go across the street and look for that benefit that is more in line with how they want to enter the workforce. So we're really hopeful over a 24-month period at trying to secure these new recruits and work with these different employers in our region. So it's going to be a lot of education and communications and what I would call hand-to-hand combat, because we have to get to that leadership and help them understand why this is important. Because it's a saying that I repeat over and over again. It's very hard to get excited about something you don't understand. So I often will tell new TCs, or when I talk to leaders, that if you've ever seen someone have an asthma attack, breathing is a necessary life function and air quality is important, but it is absolutely hard to see. So looking forward to big successes on that. We want to be able to report on that when we have our next task force meeting in the spring. And then also in 2022, we will be expanding our van pool program. The van pool program, in terms of what we report, and it is a highly productive source of transportation as we collect all that data, and then we put it into what I refer to as the federal washing machine. So every October, I have the pleasure of doing my NTD report, which reports in all the vehicle miles traveled, how many trips, a lot of different elements. We work with Enterprise Commute to pull that report together, and then it generates dollars that comes back to the designated federal recipient, which is the city of Tucson, and it helps to fund transit. So based on our plan, and we're finalizing that now with Enterprise, we could potentially triple the size of the current van pool operation. So that's super exciting. It has been years in the making, and we're looking at including vans that are going to Fort Huachuca, which we generate a lot of miles going back and forth, and also potentially the Air National Guard. So we're looking at where those groups are, and because we only have so many subsidy dollars that we can't just offer it to everybody. We have to be strategic, and then we will grow those funds. So with that, if I can answer any questions anybody has, and then I would turn it over to Natalie. I see your little red microphones. If anybody unmutes, then I can answer your questions. Nobody. All right. And one last person I have to acknowledge that's here is Renee from Pima Community College. Thanks for joining us today. You are also on our task force, and we're happy that you're here. So with that, Natalie, take it away. It is your show.
All right, thank you so much. So I'm Natalie Shep, and I am the Program Manager for Pima County Department of Environmental Quality's Outreach and Education Programs. And that includes the Clean Air Program that we administer here at PDQ and have been for the past approximately 30 years. We receive a grant from the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality to administer the Clean Air Program. And each year we do an evaluation of our outreach efforts through a survey. We contract out with a company called FMR and Associates, and they do a survey for us every year that kind of helps us assess the impact of our programs on the community. So next slide, please. Yeah, there we go. The survey is done with 500 people, and it's done through a combination of phone surveys as well as internet surveys. And the FMR Associates sets quotas to ensure that the sample that they receive is representative of the community. So you can see that they have reached approximately a little more than 50% women. And then the age is a nice even distribution amongst the all the different age groups there. So you can kind of see how that was broken out by all of the 500 respondents. Next slide, please. So this is the survey area. And again, they have quotas for the reach to ensure that we are reaching all of the areas of Eastern Pima County. So we have the biggest majority from the south, and then the Northwest, Central, and East. And they also ask the question of how long the respondents have lived in the area. And you can see that about 63% of the respondents have lived in the Tucson area or the Pima County area for 11 or more years. And then progressively goes down from there with the other, obviously the length of time for those breakouts is much smaller. So, but the majority of people that were surveyed have lived here for longer than 11 years. Next slide. So we did have 2 project goals. Part of this was for the Clean Air program. That's what I'm going to really focus on today. So the goal was to evaluate the awareness and effectiveness of the 2020-2021 Clean Air program. Also to determine commute travel behavior and current and potential use of alternate modes of travel, as well as estimate daily commuter miles saved through alternate mode usage. The other part of the survey was for the PDQ Clean Water program, and that was to assess and track issues related to stormwater perceptions, as well as household hazardous waste disposal perceptions. But I'm going to go through now there's a lot of data collected on the survey, so I really just picked out kind of the highlights of what I thought would be most interesting to you all. And I'm going to show you a series of graphs that kind of illustrates those different facets of the survey. You can go right to the next slide. So with respect to the Clean Air program, we kind of broke it out by overall program awareness of the PDQ Clean Air program. And then we asked them about specific events. So things like the Earth Day Festival, Walk and Bike to School Day, Bike Fest, and Cyclovia. You do have to remember that that this was done for 2020, 2021. And so obviously those events were much different in that time frame than they were historically. And so we can kind of assess the differences there with COVID's impact. So if you look at the Clean Air program awareness, that's the green bars, and you can kind of see that this is for 2018, 19, 20, and 21. And we were about 45% in 2018, and that was our best year. And then the last 3 years were really, really similar, just about 40%, which is not so bad for the 2020-2021 timeframe, in that we were really not able to get out in the community at community events nearly as much as we have been historically. So that's a good sign that we were able to kind of maintain that awareness level, even though we had to dramatically change what we did in our programs. And then you can see the dark blue bar is for the Earth Day Festival, pretty consistent for 18, 19, and 20. And then in 2021, the Earth Day Festival did not happen, but there was still quite a bit of awareness around it at a little over 50%. Walk and Bike to School Day. And that event kind of has varied over the years as far as our participation and how much it's actually been happening in the community. In 2018, there was only 30%, but we get up to over 40, both 2019 and 20, and both 20 and 21 were pretty similar. Bike Fest has taken a drop since 2018 and then been somewhat consistent. And again, 2021 that event also did not happen. I believe the Earth Day and the Bike Fest did not happen in 2020 either. Karen can correct me on that if I'm wrong. And then Cyclovia also was impacted by the pandemic in 2020 and 2021. And you can see that it did take a bit of a hit last year. So we're working this year with Living Streets Alliance, sponsoring their Cyclovia Remix, which is happening currently, and that will be happening all the way through March, which is different events that are happening throughout the community. In a non-traditional fashion, they aren't having a very large one-day event twice a year like they had before. And so they're having smaller events, and we are participating in those events. But they do plan to host Cyclovia again in April of 2022. So hopefully that number next year will see a bump from 20% to hopefully higher. Next slide, please. Go ahead.
Natalie, since you mentioned the Earth Day Festival last year, the in-person thing definitely did not happen, but they did move it online. It wasn't near as successful, of course. And then as far as Living Streets Alliance and the Bike Fest, they didn't do the traditional Bike Fest type. They did sponsor or at least promote some bike events, including BC Bingo, but it was much, much smaller and all virtual.
Thank you. All right, so this question focused on event participation. So the other question was about their awareness of the events, and this is about event participation. So you can see it's kind of gone up and down since 2018. And we did have event participation, surprisingly, at its highest point in 2020 at about 20%. And then at 2021, we dropped to our lowest point, which is not surprising at all since we're not happening. Next slide, please. So now this question focused on people's actions that they actually took to reduce air pollution. So you can see here that the green line shows that they are actively driving less to reduce air pollution. And that's gone from about 38% all the way up to, in 2021, just over 45%, about 46% there. So that's good news. That's definitely really our ultimate goal with our programming, is to inform people of things that they can do to reduce air pollution, and driving less would be the biggest push that we make when we do that through a variety of trying to inform people of their alternate mode opportunities through transit or bicycling, walking, telecommuting, all those things we're actively trying to promote so that we can try to get people to drive less. Keeping tires properly inflated is another educational component that we have of our program. And you can see that in 2021, that dropped off pretty considerably. And it also aligns with the orange line, keeping your car tuned. I would venture to guess that that is related to the fact that people just generally took their car in less to get maintenance because of COVID, and maybe also because they were just simply driving less. So they didn't need to bring it in to maintain it as often. You can see the brown line is bought a more fuel efficient car. And so that means that they actively, took a step to buy a car that used less fuel. And that reached its peak in the last 4 years in 2020, just over 20%, and then it went back down in 2021. And then the last one here is carpooling. And as we would expect with COVID, we were at about 35%, and then we jumped up past probably to about 43% here, down to 35, and then in 2021, it took a big hit and went down to about 20%. So again, I think that's a combination of COVID-related fears of getting into a car with other folks, as well as also maybe just the need to carpool was reduced because many more people were telecommuting. Next slide, please. So we're looking at kind of differences in the COVID era commute. They did break it out in the 2020 survey, kind of in a pre-COVID, post-COVID wave, asking people what they were doing before things shut down in March because the survey is typically done in the May, June timeframe. So you can see here that before COVID, we were at about just over 70% drive alone. And then during the COVID era of 2020, that went down to just over 60%. I think a lot of that was due to people moving to telecommuting. And then in 2021, we went back up as people were going back to work and doing their more traditional commute. You can see with the bus that definitely also took a pretty big hit. People were using that about 15% of the time, and then it was less than 10% in the COVID era of 2020, and then we're still at about 10%. So I think that one really goes to show that people are still apprehensive about using public transportation. And that may or may not be due to COVID, it likely is, but at the same time, it went from costing money to being free. So unfortunately, that really hasn't had the impact that we would hope for, that free transit is motivating people to use it more. So it seems that people still do have concerns about hopping on public transit. And then with respect to the biking, that's been pretty consistent. You can see that here, it's just maybe 11%. In the COVID era of around 10%, and then back up to 11 or so percent in 2021. The telecommuting, as you would expect, had the biggest change. So before COVID, we were looking at somewhere in the vicinity of maybe 17% folks saying that they telecommuted. During COVID, that went up all the way to over 40%. And then present day, or most recently, you can see that that's also gone back down to about 25%. So that's something that we're going to keep working on now that we feel like we know that the genie's out of the bottle with that one, and that people are able to demonstrate that they're able to telecommute and be productive at work. And we want to make sure that we can continue to kind of capitalize on that and really work with TRP to continue to promote that. There's many different benefits, but obviously the reduced vehicle miles traveled and the reduced air pollution associated with telecommuting is significant. So we will be working harder in the coming months and years to try to continue to encourage employers to offer telecommuting for employees who are able to do that. Next slide, please. So the takeaways that we've gotten from this year's survey, as we would expect, that those who are familiar with the program are more likely to take actions to reduce air pollution. So obviously that translates to us in trying to find as many ways as possible, trying to familiarize people that live within the region with the Clean Air program, so that we can have them be better educated about their options, and also better prepared to take action to drive less and reduce their own contribution to the air pollution in the region. We know that COVID has had a significant impact on commuting patterns. And then the other recommendation that was given to us based on the data that were collected by FMR is that efforts should be made to target various groups of people, including young people, Latinx communities, and of course, residents who are new to Pima County. So we are working on developing a program right now, specifically for young people ages 14 to 20. And that will be launching this year, trying to ensure that we're really getting the information to those people who are newly getting their driver's licenses, making decisions on their own about how they're going to be getting around. We want to make sure that they are well aware of the impact that driving has on air pollution and greenhouse gas emissions, and also the alternative that they can use to try to reduce their own impact. And we will be working specifically with Latinx communities on that specific program. So we will be kind of tying the young people in the Latinx communities together with that programming. So be on the lookout for that when we are able to launch it and let you all know about it. I think that's all. So I can answer any questions now, if anybody has any.
Not seeing any microphones turn off. We did lose one person. Natalie, thank you for going over that. I know that this is, you're on tour and you've done it at EPAC and different things, so appreciate you doing it for us. It is about 10 minutes after 11, so we are right at about an hour, a little bit over. If anybody has any other questions, certainly we're always available by email. We will be sharing the slide decks with our ADEQ partners because they were unable to attend today due to scheduling conflicts. So since our speakers have shared that with us, we're going to package that up and send it off to Amanda. And then for those of you who are on the task force, I'll give you just a heads up that we will be sending out in December the need to up our term because we are at 2 years. And we are going to have to reseat our task force group again. So that's coming soon. For our jurisdictional partners, it will be you or someone in your jurisdiction because we have to have you at the table since you're part of this. So with that, and I don't see any questions, we're going to call it a wrap and we'll say at 11:10 on November 15th, we conclude our regional task force meeting. Thank you all. Have a wonderful, happy holidays. We will be in touch via email and sharing information. And if you have any questions, again, you can email us, contact us anytime. We're here as a resource for all of you. Thank you to our speakers as well, and to our hosts and Crystal and Jeff and Zonia who make all the behind the scenes happen. So with that, I will bid adieu and have a great Monday.